Thank you so much. First, I would like to thank the organizer of the webinar series for their invitation, in particular Mark B.D. Edwards. I also wish to thank my colleagues, Dr. Delaere from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and Dr. Jose Capriles from La Paz, Bolivia, and Penn State University as speaker for the discussions that will take place after this lecture. So, as a junior research fellow, I have the pleasure of conducting my research at Bolivia, looking at the archaeology of the Americas and the study of pre-Hispanic culture. Today, I will present one of the theme of my research, archaeology of high altitude Lacustrine socio-ecosystems in the Central Andes, with a special focus on Lake Titicaca. I will structure my presentation in 7 points. So first, the cultural and chronological context. The Andes Cordillera stretch along thousands of kilometers in the western part of South America, covering vast portions of Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina. It is characterized in particular by a diversity of ecosystems spreading over several ecological levels that can reach almost 7,000 meters above sea level, and by the presence of hundreds of lagunas or lakes ranging from micro to macro ecosystems. Lacustrine drainage basins are part of the most dynamic landscapes of the Cordillera de los Andes, because the imbalance in the hydrological scale produces variations in lake levels that can cause flooding or drought over short and long periods. These natural phenomena have important repercussions on ecosystem and natural resource, and may eventually influence the cultural development of the Andean regions. For archaeology, periodic transformations of a lake socio-ecosystem represents a research opportunity, as they have frequently contributed to the preservation of paleo-landscape. A part of the Andes Cordillera lake territory today submerged, including ancient shores, can be studied through techniques and methods of inland water archaeology. The underwater material remains of the lake therefore represents a valuable source of information. Firstly, because the natural conditions have allowed exceptional preservations of paleo evidence artifacts also. And secondly, because the ultra-stratigraphic sedimentary context have preserved. So today, I will present the results of 10 years of research carried out in the rain gorge of the Andes, the Lake Titicaca. So this lake, Lake Titicaca, located between Peru and Bolivia, is a South American lake at an altitude of 4,000 meters. This inland sea, with a surface area of more, than 8,000 square kilometers, has contributed to the development of a dozen civilizations. The drainage basins has a catchment area of 60,000 square kilometers. The Lake Titicaca Basin is one of the most important and old cultural centers in the history of South America. The lake creates a temperate ecosystem and has contributed to development of complex societies of these islands or altiplano, located at the convergence of two mountain ranges, these two cordilleras. This territory is also in a cultural strategic position at the crossroads of many axes of circulations and exchange between the costa or la costa, the mountain, la sierra, and of course the selva, the forest, the Amazon, which has furthered its development. The first complex societies of Lake Titicaca appeared in the first millennium BC in the form of agricultural and pastoral communities organized around civic and ceremonial spaces. Comparable to archaic Greece, for example, the lake territory is divided between some 20 autonomous city-states, in this case, that share the same material culture, but that share so the beliefs, including the center, the city, the sites of Tiahuanaco, in the south part of the Lake Titicaca basins. In the 6th century AD, for reasons that are still debated, the majority of these states disappeared in favor of Tiahuanaco, this Tiahuanaco city, which unified for the first time the whole lake territory to form a state, the first state of the region. These are called the Tiahuanaco civilizations. The Tiahuanaco society disintegrated in the 11th century AD with an exodus of the population, a fragmentation of the territory into small chiefdoms that will privilege the slopes of the lake, the appearance of new subsistence techniques, and a new socio-economic organizations. From the 15th century, a conqueror empire colonized the lake basins and the islands of Titicaca, the Inca. Titicaca was not only attractive for its natural resources and strategic positions, but also represents one of the most powerful cosmogony centers in the beliefs of the past local population. When the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, the region of Lake Titicaca was one of the most populated areas in South America. So now my research questions. Over the past 50 years, many archaeological projects have revealed a dense and continuous occupation of the lake basins over the last 3 millennia. However, despite the discovery of thousands of archaeological sites, no site has ever been discovered within 100 meters of the coast. This paradox is at the origin of my research. Because can we really think that the lake was never used by the ancient population? Of course not. Titicaca is comparable to the ancient Mediterranean Sea as a South American Mare Nostrum. But why, until today, haven't we discovered any evidence of navigation, fishing, boats, port area, or specialized activities? To answer this question, we start with the hypothesis of level variations in Lake Titicaca and, of course, change in the natural landscape over time. Lake Titicaca indeed falls into the category of high altitude lake. The water level is mainly determined by the relationship between the hydrological influx and the evaporations of the water. As soon as there is an imbalance between these two phenomena, there is an increase or decrease in the volume of water. We have evidence of the alternation of wet and dry periods in paleo-limnological data. Therefore, how can we evaluate this phenomenon and assess the impact of climate change on the settlement dynamics of the lake? To test this hypothesis, we decide to adopt a double collection strategy. First, we conducted archaeological survey and excavation in the lake sediments. But second, we sampled 2 sediment cores with our colleagues from France, from the Université. Since 2012, we have carried out about 100 stratigraphic test pits in order to locate the ancient coastline and the coastal archaeological sites that are now submerged. The paleoclimatic models show indeed that the fluctuation during the last 3 millennia did not exceed 20 meters. So we have concentrated on areas between 1 and 18 meters deep near the current coast. It's so useful because we're diving in an altitude of 4,000 meters. So 220 meters is a relative and good frontier in francés. No importa, continua. So, the archaeological stratigraphic excavations, as you can see, is particularly favorable for Lake Titicaca. One of the first test pits we made have uncovered ancient ground level with archaeological objects, sometimes buried under 3 meters of sediments. So the main difficulty at Titicaca is not only the excavation, but also finding archaeological sites that are not visible at all above the lake sediment. We see, for example, the remains of a fireplace with bronze bones and, in this case, ceramics fragments. Artifacts and ecofacts are records in plan and cross sections. It's a classic method, and we recorded the test piece using photogrammetry. The example in this case show a 4x4 test pits with more than 3 meters of sediment. So it's useful, no? As you know, because after the excavation and after the destructions of the test pits, we have the entire data for the processing and the analysis of artifacts and ecofacts. On the top of the excavations, we carry out with our colleagues of Université some 20 core samples in the deeper area of the lake in order, in this case, to obtain further paleoclimatic data to better understand the lake's fluctuations over time. Cutting the cores show micro stratifications of the sediment that is not visible to the human eye underwater. Combining the two methods give us distinct but complementary results. So now, what's the results, the archaeological results? Since 1944, about 20 expeditions have been organized in Lake Titicaca. Despite this, only one underwater archaeological site was discovered in 1977 in the north of the Island of the Sun. is an underwater offering sites. Using our knowledge of the lake's level fluctuations and developing predictive models to reduce search areas. Since 2012, we have located, identified, and recorded 25 submerged archaeological sites spread over more than 300 kilometers of coastline in the Bolivia sites. These results make it possible for the first time to better reconstruct the natural and cultural landscape of the past, in particular from an archaeological perspective. We then connect both the archaeological data from the lake and the shoreline, indeed with regards to the fluctuations of the lake. The archaeological material, the analysis of material is indivisible, is produced from the same culture or the same cultures through the time. This long work of cataloging this underwater heritage required 350 days of work on the lake and 2,000 hours of diving with 20 divers. More than 20,000 artifacts were recorded through the 25 submerged sites. In order to identify this heritage and obtain a chronological value, we analyze mainly ceramics fragments, but also lithic objects and bronze objects. Being them in sequences, we notice that the underwater heritage concerns not only pre-Hispanic periods, but also colonial and historical periods. However, we note that the most important anthropic imprint concerns the period between the 4th and the 11th century AD. Among these results, these 25 sites, we single out one exceptional site called Orchesupu, here highlighted in orange in your screen. Because in this site, it documents a continuous occupation for 3,000 years. So within the same site, we can therefore date and record the fluctuation of the lake through time, thanks to the presence of archaeological material, and evaluate the evolutions of the Lacustrine practice, for example, not only for the first millennium BC, but for the two next millennium to the colonial and republican periods. For this site, this Orchesupu is located at the end of the Copacabana Peninsula, opposite the island of the Sun. The peninsula and the island are separated by a stretch more than 300 meters deep. And since the archaeological remains from on the island go back at least 5,000 years, pre-Hispanic island societies had to use boats. Currently, the underwater archaeological site of Orchesupu is located at the foot of a cliff where we have started conducting excavation from a depth of 3 meters. Excavations in this context, in the submerged coastline, is actually very slow and very difficult because of the presence of large quantities of stones resulting from the erosions of the cliffs. This also explains why the diver of the past have not located any of these exceptional sites. For Orchesupu, in order to obtain a global vision of these archaeological sites, we decided to carry out 12 test pits along 3 different axes. This strategy allows to have a complete stratigraphic sections between 1 and 15 meter deep, while widening the search zones. The total excavation, in this case, the total excavation area, cover 14.8 square meters. For section 1, we did in this case 2 successive test pits at the foot of the cliff. The stratigraphy revealed ancient ground or circulation levels alternating with sediment and erosion levels. Also, we are digging underwater. We are actually working on paleoterrestrial context or land context, illustrating an ancient coastline zone. The nature of the archaeological material not only supports this information, but also, of course, provides information as to the nature of the activities that took place in this ancient coastal area. Around a fireplace, for example, we discovered a specialist wood and stone cutters workshop. We also identified the product of other activities, such as leatherwork with the presence of crepes, needles, and spindleboards, fishing activities too, with small ballast weights, and wooden tools for repairing fishing nets, and the presence of a workshop manufacturing bones objects. All this archaeological remains was recorded within different units, reflecting not only epoch periods, but to a dry or underwater level. This therefore gives a relative chronology of the lake's fluctuation over time, as well as the extent of these variations with an absolute altimetry value. The presence of paleoterrestrial archaeological sites demonstrates the importance of integrating paleoclimatic models in the study of lake populations of the ancient Andes. For section 2, we excavated, in this case, 6 successive test pits that form a 12-meter long trench between 3 and 12 meter deep. The difference in elevations made the excavation difficult, but brings new information. The sediment and archaeological material found in this area allow us to identify it at a transit point, or in other words, the interface between the paleo shore and the old lake. The former functions of this area is reflected, for example, in the discovery of anchors and ballast zones, for example. These are the first indirect material evidence we have today of the existence of pre-Hispanic ships or boats. This sector corresponds actually to a boarding area, or in other words, a pre-Hispanic port. We also have some isolated objects typical of port area, which must have fallen into the water during, for example, boarding in the past. Finally, for in this example for section 3, we have favorite deeper area, which technically have always been submerged or underwater. In the deep test pits, we mainly discovered these ballast stones used for fishing nets. But the excavations in this area led to an unexpected discovery at a depth of 13 meters, with the presence of a ground floor level with the remains of a fireplace and ceramic fragments associated with an ancient vegetation cover. According to the ceramic material and the isotopic dating of the charcoal, we have in this case a terrestrial level, a ground level, dated to almost 3,000 years at a depth of 13 meters. Finally, on the last day, we tested for continue a very technical immersion at a depth of 32 meters, where we could stay only for 8 minutes, because in Rocal we dive at an altitude of 4,000 meters. So in these few minutes, we were able to locate many intact objects, such bronze Inca weapons, the first that I see, but through semi-precious stones, gold sheets, llama bones, and for the first time intact ceramics, because the coastline, as you know, is a very erosive area, and the material, the artifact, the ceramic is with great descriptions. So the deeps area is incredible for the potential, the architectural potential, because for the first time we can locate it and study some ceramic, intact ceramic from the lake. As a discussions. During the periods between the 6th and 11th centuries, so during Tiwanaku period, the main periods that I study in this project, the Central Andes are divided by two major civilizations, the Wari in the north and the Tiwanaku in the south. The archaeological approach and results therefore allow us to assess the overall cultural and climatic signal with a new perspective by combining both archaeological and geochemical or geoclimatic data. We note, for example, that the dates of the emergence of these two civilizations coincide with a major flooding event at Lake Titicaca in the 6th century. Also, the cultural responses induced by climate change cannot be explained in a monocausal way, but some climate change are so important that they cannot be ignored. The stratigraphic and material results from archaeological test pits show really different periods of high and low level lake levels, including the fact that the activities and the occupation of the sites were abruptly interrupted following a massive flood dated in the 16th century that literally froze some sites in a matrix of lake sediments, like Little Pompeii, not in this case in Orchesupu, but we excavated other sites in the south part of the Titicaca basins. In this case, we located and we recorded archaeological remains with great conservations and directly frozen by a big past flood that conserved the entire heritage. By sequences, each test pits, all the test pits, in this case from Orchesupu, we have not only a global vision of the change in the water level from a local perspective, but also a regional or inter-regional one. On this figure, the light colored units represents periods of high water level of the lake, and the dark colored ones represents ground level. By interconnecting the test pits, we can so locate test pit after test pits, the shorelines and of the different periods. Indeed, the presence of archaeological remains as well as isotopic dating allow us to date each unit and make connections. These results show us that the natural landscape of the Titicaca region change over time, following the fluctuation of the lake, of the level of the lake, but not only between the successive pre-Hispanic society, but also during their lifetime. For example, in this case, in the green units is the Tiwanaku periods. And in this case, we have a minimum 3 lake level event difference, not only high, but also low. So this continuity of occupation, of presence of artifacts demonstrates a great cultural resilience from the past population. Fluctuation in this lake were a now and then phenomenon by the pre-Hispanic population. They adapt by diversifying or modify their resource exploitations techniques. So there is no monocausal really explanation between a climate event and the advent of four of the culture that succeed on one another in Titicaca. As argued by hypothesis from paleoclimatic data. However, in this case, we can see that some natural events, such as this great flood, did play a role in the history of the lake. In this synthesis, in this figure, these results show that overall, the water level of the Lake Titicaca was much lower before the Spanish conquest in the early 16th century. This explains why now the underwater heritage of Lake Titicaca is so varied and important, especially in the ancient coastal area. We can therefore easily imagine the potential of the other lakes of the Andes mountain range in Cordillera. For the Titicaca, if we apply these results to the entire southern lake basins, we can estimate that this big flood of the 16th century affected more than 1,000 square kilometers of all the agricultural land. Indeed, in a very short period of time, the natural landscape changed profoundly and the coastline moved by more than 10 kilometers at times by flooding vast territory that were used and occupied by humans before. This must have created enormous territorial and political pressure and really potentially crisis like food crisis. So this model is useful because digital terrain models combined with this archaeological data from excavation and paleoclimatic data from the test pits, archaeological test pits, but so from the core make it possible to model the fluctuation of the lake through time with an absolute altitude value. This model, as you understand, is useful. It's a useful tool in the study and locations of archaeological sites that now underwater. The result also allows the unravel to different influence anthropogenic processes of the climate change and the climate process of the cultural change. In particular, we combine with our colleague classical geochemical proxy, such for example as titanium, which is a detrital tracer reflecting the erosions of the drainage basins, with, in this case, archaeological proxies, including the anthropogenic activities weights, and of course, the absolute elevation of the different paleo-ground level. So combined the data, archaeological data, geochemical data, paleo climatic data, with this process, with this method, we can now propose a high resolution model of the fluctuation. And of course, notice the point, after that, evaluate this underwater heritage and of course the practice, the Lacustrine practice of the past are very many applications as by combining this approach, and we can look at issue such as metallurgy, in Titicaca, using trace metals and lattice topic compositions, like the pollution topic, like the formations, the process of formation of archaic states. So the underwater material not only artifacts, but allow us to understand, to explore the cultural process and development in these regions. And all the papers. So yeah, no, the point is to finish this high resolution model of lake fluctuation through time, and the full sequences will be completed in the next month. So in conclusions, high altitude lacustrine drainage basins are part of the most dynamic landscape of the Andean Cordillera, because, as you know, the imbalance in the hydrological scale produce big variations in lake level. Periodic transformation of lake socio-ecosystem represents really a research opportunity, as they have frequently contributed to the preservation of paleo landscape. The underwater material remain of the lake socio-ecosystem therefore represents a valuable source, or a new valuable source of information, as it enables the evolution of the global climatic signal over time to be evaluated in relation to the anthropogenic signal. To product the product, yes, of this last 10 years of research is still being processed. But in the next 4 years, I will work with the team to carry out a diagnostic in other lakes of the Andes to increase the data of comparative linkage to the difference of altitude and the different surface of the lake, and so in order to have a more contrasted vision in the study of the relation between the human of the past and his environment. This subject, as you know, is also a subject of actuality, of which I hope that the past example, in this case from Lake Titicaca, will be able to be useful for the future challenge. Thank you so much for your attention. This short presentation and synthesis of these results. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Christophe. Brilliant presentation, great images. I mean, some lovely drawings, and great timing. Thank you. If you want to turn your camera on, the audience can see you. And if we take this opportunity to ask the same of Dolores and Jose, who are joining us for the questions and discussion session. Do you let's see if we'll get Jose as well. Dolores, do you want to introduce yourself and what's your role in all this?
Hello. Well, as some of you know, I'm an underwater archaeologist from Argentina. My main activities in underwater archaeology have been on maritime environments, but I do have a past life before I learned to dive, which is 10 years of working in the high Andes in Argentina. So I am really thrilled with this work that Christophe and team are conducting in Bolivia, because it's shedding light already on aspects that, as he himself said, were scarcely known, because all the archaeology, with maybe one exception, had been conducted just on land and even several meters away from the current shorelines of the lake. So I think there's a lot to learn. A lot is going to come up, and is already doing so. And I think also that the preservation of the archaeological record underwater will be quite interesting, because it will allow to see traits or characteristics of the artifacts not easily preserved on land. And of course, artifacts related to navigation, such as those anchors or weights for fishing nets that Christophe has shown. So it is a fascinating project, and I take the opportunity that I have the floor to say that it also has another spin-off, which is the capacity building in Bolivia. It's been a project that from the very beginning included local people, local students, local professionals, and it has been very, very inclusive, and that is fantastic for this part of the world. So that's what I have to say for now.
Thank you.
Good job,
Thank you very
Christophe.
much. And Jose, do you want to introduce yourself and how are you involved?
Hello, Mark, and hello, everyone. Yeah, I've been a collaborator with Christophe and his project from early on, initially as the faunal analyst, but we've been able to also overlap in a number of different interests, including what he presented on today, which is that not only the cultural history of the region and the significance that some of the, particularly the sacred sites have, but also understanding a little bit better what is going on with the dynamics of the landscape. We tend to see the region, and many Andean archaeologists working in Lake Titicaca itself see the lake as very static, you know, thanks to the work of some paleo-environmental scholars, we've been able to glean a little bit about the dynamics that the lake has had with those fluctuations in lake levels, but the dimension that Christophe's project has been bringing in, being able to actually ground test or underwater, subaquatically test some of these assumptions, I think it has been really exciting. So we've been collaborating on a number of different sub-projects within the bigger work. And yeah, and as Dolores was saying, one of the really important aspects that this project has had is its a strong connectivity with the local communities and the local organizations and institutions, including Universidad Mayor de San Andrés, including the Ministry cultures in Bolivia, and many municipalities and local communities have been engaged and been part of this project. So yeah, I mean, it's always exciting to see these presentations. Christophe always brings in great visuals and brings in new information from the ongoing work that he's been doing. And you know, it's exciting to see what's going to come up in the next phases of this research.
Thank you, thank you. I love the visuals, the drawings, the stratigraphic drawings, illustration. That's absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
A lot of mention of the Bolivian side, but obviously the lake is, I mean, I don't know the politics, but the geography is that it's Bolivia and Peru. So has similar work, or are there activities taking place on the Peruvian side of the lake?
It's in process. So basically, it's first an administrative option, no? Because it's more easy to work in the same country. So as the island of the sun, the island of Isla de la Luna, for example, is in the south part, and of course of the Tiahuanaco city capital is the south part. We chose to beginning this project from the south parts. But as you know, the lake is indivisible. It's only now one frontier in French. And yeah, the plan is continue this project. First, inventory, cataloging, identify, and after study the underwater sites of the north, of the Peruvian sites, And yeah, the first big job is it's okay because, for example, the fluctuation model is the same because the big flood, for example, in the south part is the same that in the north part. So now we have the data, we have experience because in the first time it's terrible, no altitude, no oxygen, not understand nothing. So a process year after year. Now we understand the context, the liturgical context, the technical. So now we have the maturity, the experience for continue, and we go to continue this year in the Peruvian sites.
Thank you. We got any questions from the audience? Let me undock the question pane and see if we have any. Okay, so we have one from Diego. Which is the oldest site that you have found in the shore of Lake Titicaca?
Yes, thank you for this question. So at the beginning, we looking for the Tiahuanaco sites. So first millennium AD, but as you know, when we excavate all the test pits. So test piece after test pits, we see, we understand that more deep we dig, more old is the remains. So in this process, year after year, we elected some deep area for diagnostic, for see. And in this case, we located first time the pre-Tiahuanaco artifacts. So in the beginning of this millennium, but when we continue at the finish, we located 3 dozen year artifacts at 15, 16, 18 meter of deep. So it's old. It's possible that have more old, but in this case, this look an incredible potential, because if we have a coastline in 15 meter deep, the potential of the study, the archaeological remains is wow, incredible. And it's because today too we looking for new techniques because we can dive to 30 meters in this lake because it's so high, altitude. So new data, old data, new challenge. So it's not only scientific or human challenge, but so technical, logistical, and so implication. Also, it's fascinating.
Oh, indeed, we always get taught when scuba diving about diving at altitude. The idea of diving at that altitude is phenomenal. I have a question about the bones. Whilst we have Jose in terms of the remains, the offerings sites and the 25 similar sites that have now been found since 2012. Is there, with regards to the ceramics, the lithics, and the bones, is there a commonality in terms of the assemblage that's found at these sites? Is it the same things?
Yeah, that's a very good question. There are important differences. There is this offering site COA where there are remains of whole animals. So most of the elements are fairly complete, so not a whole lot of fragmentations. Most of the remains are from juvenile or even younger animals. So the animals that were sacrificed were fairly young. Again, mostly complete animals, although a few of the smaller bone elements were not recovered, probably have degraded over time. It's mostly llamas, mostly camelids, domesticated camelids, although there are some interesting findings like the canine of a possible wild Andean cat. And then the other types of sites, which were mostly residential habitation sites, have fairly fragmented assemblages that look fairly similar to what we typically find when we excavate inland sites, with still a dominance of domesticated camelids, but there are also some other taxa as well. And then there is this noise of fish and a neuron or frog and toad remains, as well as some aquatic bird remains that are probably more of taphonomic or natural in the region. And so, and there's some variability within different deposits in some of these sites as well, depending on how those spaces were used, and also some aspects related with conservation.
Thank you. We have a question from Christophe from Christopher. He says, good job. You mentioned the economic political stress on past communities as the lake level has risen. In your modeling, are you able to input your research into the potential economic impact of the current climate crisis on today's or tomorrow's local communities? Ooh, big question.
Yes, thank you for this very interesting question. So yes, today I chose to present the whole data, not the methodology, but after different topic, incredible, no? And in this case, because we have now the model, not the fluctuation model through the time almost finished. We have a new data, new approach, no, for the evaluation, no, of the cultural development, no, not only about practices, cities, dynamic of population, but also of territory, no, pressure, territory, change, no, because we can talk about change, mutation, transformation of the natural landscape, but in this case, because it's a cultural center with a population, we explore now with colleagues to evaluate the impacts, for example, in with different events, the flood or no flood, and in the territory scale, but it's also systematic work of data. For example, the modeling is we have the altitude of the water, the plane, the range, and now with data we can first identify the whole agriculture zone areas, and after we can evaluate for example, the destruction of this, and so we can after this process explore the idea, the change, the pressure of this territorial change, first in the economic life, and after in the civic life. For example, we can see that the Tiahuanaco change the agriculture strategy with intensive canal, new management of the top zone, the valley. So I change, and after, for example, with the study of the old, before the flood, civic spaces, we can see, for example, that for example, 2 or 3 centers that not destroyed but abandoned. Yeah. So sorry for my English. In French, Spanish, and English, I try. So yes, it's very, very, very interesting and unexpected, because in the first place, inventory of underwater remains, and now with colleagues we have 25 topics to develop, because we have unexpected data, not only artifacts but territory, economic, etc., etc., etc.
Thank you. I know you were involved, or your work was in part of a workshop that was undertaken, was it by UNESCO back in 2018? In terms of going back to Dolores's thing about capacity building and using your research to raise not only awareness but obviously also skills and professionalism within the area. How did that go? How was it probably seems like a long time ago now.
The question is for me, no?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. And sorry for, so what's the question, please? I don't
so I know that there was
the
was a workshop held back in 2018, I think.
Okay, yeah, okay, sorry. Okay, I understand.
So you presumably you had interest from throughout the region, from other countries, archaeologists joining and attending.
Yes, okay. So yes, so I the scientific project, but in the same times with like Dolores explained, we developed a field school, underwater archaeology field school. We developed many new tools, and finally, as you know, the underwater archaeology is a new, very young discipline, and in relation with the inland water archaeology, I think that now we have a new dynamic of investigation, no? And so, for example, the relation with the UNESCO is not only about protection, valorization, but is also a platform to talk. And for example, with Dolores Elkin, we work together, we explore together, with a perspective, the methodological approach, the need to working together, not only inside the water, but with the coast archaeologists, not only about pre-Hispanic, but in this case for South America, but too for historic, because the methods, the methodology, the tools. Very yeah, we need to work together, no? And it's explain this relation, and finally how this project was built, no? And in the way. I don't know if Dolores, if you want to continue.
No, I just wanted to comment that after after we met in 2018 in Bolivia, like all these meetings, conferences, workshops, or any type of event like these, there's an energy that is created, and there's enthusiasm, and there's exchange, and there's inspiration, and there's the need of collaboration, and there's awareness, and you never know how many and diverse positive outcomes you can have. For example, now Christophe and myself are working on a book project that generated there. Really, we didn't have it in mind at that time, but like Christophe was saying, then you start talking and ideas come, and you think it's important to have more communication between land archaeologists and underwater archaeologists, between maritime archaeologists and inland water archaeologists, and so on. So that's one nice outcome of that workshop. And also, once again, the integration of the local communities. It was quite impressive for me to see how this Titicaca project, yes, archaeology is the core, but there's a tremendous interaction and dialogue with the local people in the small towns all around the lake, at least on the on the Bolivian side for now, but surely will happen on the Peruvian side in the future as well. And that's fabulous when the local people feel I think the word these days is empowerment. They feel they play a role, and they do play a role in decision making and in this type of projects. So it's a very rich process altogether.
There was even mention of a potential semi-submerged museum close to the island of the sun to allow visitors to see the hidden heritage under the waters of the lake. Did that progress beyond just an idea?
Yes, and now it's in process. No, it's a large time process, and more than a building. No, that is the result of discussions about the access of this heritage, because we working underwater, and in particular in this case in Titicaca Lake, when we have discovered this little Pompeii with incredible conservations works, and I don't have talk about this day, but for the first time, next time, sorry. And yes, it's the results about the discussion for the access to this patrimony, not only for the community, but research community, but so for the local community, for developing tourism, but for I look the word in English for the sensibilization, no, the people about this heritage, and in progress, no. So first the idea, after the architect plan, after video, after, and now this project is in the table of the ministry. So it's a large project, but oral que funciona, como se dice en castellano, pero it's I hope that this project se conclut, no? And it's very important, because in this case of Titicaca Lake, the people talk Aymara and Spanish too, but Aymara is an oral language, no, with a very rich tradition of mythology, oral tradition, no. And for example, century after century, the community continue to transmission about history and yeah, tradition transmissions. And in this case, it's very interesting because, for example, exists a deluge myth, diluvial myth in English. I don't know, the flooding myth. And it's not the biblical myth, but really a text and history. And it's an example, but are more example. And now, because for the first time we have true evidence, no wow, city underwater, no, we have evidence. We have connection between narrative, componente in Castellano, narrative, mythical text and archaeological remains. So the relationship with the community and this project of, for example, this museum is not only a museum, but it's like a gate, to access to no mythical place, but the whole territory from this community that now is underwater. So it's more than museum. No? It's a process. It's because it's it's very muy bueno.
Exciting times ahead. Okay, we don't have any more questions. Time is marching on. I think unless anyone types in one very, very quickly, we might leave it there and let you get your dinner, your supper. As obviously for you, it's past 9 o'clock in the evening. Okay, so no, we don't have anything else. So thank you so much, all three of you. Thank you, Christophe, of course, especially, but also to Dolores and to Jose for joining us this evening. Thank you to everybody for attending and submitting your questions. I'm going to take control of the screen just so that we can, if I can show the right one, so we can talk about what's coming next. So we will be posting a recording of today's webinar to our YouTube channel in due course. This is where you can find recordings of all of the other NES webinars in the series, as well as other webinars or presentations that have been given particularly over the lockdown period for us in 2020 and 2021. Next month, I hope, if I press the right button, next month we shall be hearing from Dr. Claire Calgagno and Lauren Tidbury from the Honor Frost Foundation, who will be talking about the Punic ship of Marsala, 50 years of discovery. So join us on the 31st of August at 1900 British summertime. So on behalf of all of our speakers, Christophe, Dolores and Jose, on behalf of the NES and our sponsors at the Honor Frost Foundation, thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day or your evening and stay safe, everybody. Thank you very much. Bye.